Well, welcome everyone. Let's get started with introductions. If you care to share who you are in text chat, that would be awesome. Just hit T and type away. Let us know who you are, what organization you're with, where you're based, anything else you care to share with the rest of the group. And we'll get started in just a minute. And I'll start by introducing myself. I'm Anders Granstedt, Dr. Granstedt today. I'm president of the Granstedt Group. We're based in Colorado, custom developed e-learning firm, and host of these meetings. I'll introduce our panel members here in just a minute. So let's get started with the introductions of the of participants here in text chat. We get Ken from Siemens near Philadelphia. We get Lem Oberlin, Steve Churchill from Wells Fargo, one of our regulars, as many of you are. Robin Donnell, CEO and founder of Reaction Grid. Hey, great to see you, Robin. So, by the way, for text chat, there is a way to get the box bigger there by hitting the you hit T first of all to get the text box up, otherwise it's going to disappear on you. David Greenwood. And we got Ken Rigby from Millennium. I'm looking out here. I'll be right back.
Just out of curiosity, how many people have an Oculus Rift? Just type Y if you do. You got yours, John? Nice. We have to play Team Fortress. You got it last week, sweet. Indian Joe's got one, sweet.
Sorry about that, guys. All right, well, let's keep the introductions flowing here in text chat. Great to see such a big crowd. So I'm super excited to introduce a panel of dear friends. You probably know most of our panel members today, starting with John Brochard, based in Madison, Wisconsin, freelance virtual architect. We worked with him for years, and as you all know, he's probably the greatest 3D designer in the entire 3D virtual world, and he's been blogging frequently and enthusiastically about the Oculus Rift here in the last few weeks, and is going to share his experiences with this new virtual reality headset. You all probably also know Eric Hackathon, project manager for data visualization at NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Research Agency, here in Boulder. So Eric and Jeff Smith, a software engineer with NOAA, and Julian Lind, who is simulation and data visualization architect at NOAA, and also Julian actually also teaches a course at University of Colorado on Unity. They have what I can best describe as a toy store for geeks at NOAA. They have all of these latest hardware that we're going to be talking about here, gesture-based input and display 3D holistic style, holographic style, display technologies at their lab in NOAA, and are really working as an R&D facility where they're testing these things out and also building particularly uni applications for them. And we also have Richard Hackathon, who is Eric's father and is a frequent visitor and speaker here, and a pioneer in data visualization. He's still waiting for his Oculus Rift headset, but is going to share what what he knows about that and other display technologies. So, of course, it's a topic that we frequently discuss here, how we can move away from the dreaded laptop with its keyboard that dates from the days of the typewriters. And it seems like the time is finally ripe where there's some new equipment and hardware and software that is really becoming affordable and available to really make this take this immersive experience to new level with both display technology and gesture-based input. So I'm going to turn it over to our esteemed panel here. Guys, Eric, do you want to start, or?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And maybe if the other panelists want to join me up on stage here. I think once you're up on stage, Anders was saying that the audio is omnipresent, if that's the word that I'm looking for. So, hey, Bev can hear us now. All right, so Alan, I think, Anders, your introduction may not have come through to everyone. But, we could take just a minute, I guess. And for those of us that are here on stage, is it worth 30-second overview on who we are? Or,
sure, let's do it. Sorry, I can scream. So, yeah, this is up.
All right, Jeff Smith is also with us, but he just crashed out. So I think he'll be running up on stage here in just a second. I guess I could briefly start. My name is Eric Hackathorn. I work for NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and I'm a project manager. I think I've met many of you before. So we do a lot of virtual worlds, data visualization, games. Had some history in Second Life back in the day, but have primarily moved to Unity as the platform that we're using. Yeah, I guess that's my 2 sentences. Who's up next? How about Julian? Do you want to say something?
Sure thing. So, my name is Julian. I work with Eric at NOAA. I also teach over at our local university, the University of Colorado. Teach courses on video game design. And yeah, as Eric mentioned, we do a number of different things for NOAA. We work on games, we work on data visualizations, we work on simulations. We look at a lot of new technology. So we do evaluation, we try and find applications, try and find customers. And that's mostly what we're going to be talking with you about today. So Jeff, why don't you now that you're here?
My name is Jeff Smith. I also work with Eric and Julian. I work on a number of projects with them. I work on TerraViz, the Unity-based 3D spinning globe that displays various environmental data sets.
John, you want to say a couple words?
Sure. I am John Bruchot, and my background is in architecture, but I've been using virtual worlds for both professional practice and to develop purely virtual architecture that's used in virtual environments like the one we're standing in right now. This is via Engage, and I've worked in Second Life, OpenSim, most recently Unity, and basically, I just got my Oculus Rift a few weeks ago, and I'm really enjoying it. I think it has a lot of potential for this sort of application, and I look forward to talking more about it.
And Richard.
And I'm Richard Hackathorn, and I've been concentrating on an area called immersive intelligence, bringing data analytics into the virtual world environment. And hence collaboration with Eric and Julian and Jeff here. Been a admirer of John's work over the years, and I have an order in for the Oculus, but it has not arrived. So I can only repeat things that I've seen in videos and the gushing positive comments from John.
All right. Well, thank you. I think we're a little flexible on today's format. This feels like probably more of a panel discussion. So we prepared a few slides here, and John, I know we didn't get much input from you, and I apologize for that in advance. But I think at any point, if people have questions, or have a discussion on what's on the screen, or particular ideas where discussion should go, feel free to interrupt. But I can kind of take a lead, I guess, and we'll see where this heads. Anders, do you want to grab the next slide? You'll see that lots of people are talking, and I didn't actually put everyone's name on there, but we'll see what happens here. So this this kind of gets back to a conversation that we had a couple weeks back. This slide came up as part of a conversation that we had here at NOAA, and it's basically kind of a complex 2D map, contains a lot of information. About a discussion on climate and the impact of climate change. And it was meant as a discussion piece for how could we convey complex information within a 3D system. Obviously, virtual worlds have some unique capabilities here. And if we go to the next slide. Next slide. There we go. One of the things that Julian especially has worked on is a ability to translate some of this information into kind of a diorama setting. Next slide. And I'm curious what's going to happen here with the video. Yeah, I don't have the ability to push play here, do I? Let me send out a link.
No, you don't. We can play. I can put in the other screen here.
So in the chat window, I just typed in a URL. People hopefully can access that directly, as well as you can see a YouTube link embedded in the slide. So hopefully that gives people a couple options to watch the video. Julian, did you want to hop in here and discuss a little in terms of development and the advantages of the system?
Do you guys want to play the video? I can play it right here. I just started it.
Sorry, Andrew, I couldn't hear you.
The video is playing right over here on the screen. I'm not getting sound.
I don't know if that's the same video.
Right.
That is a video. That's a sequence for an ROV that we've been working on. So as we zoom in here, it probably is in a different place for everyone. But basically what we've done is to create an underground or underwater system. And this is a ROV that you can pilot around. In this case, you're actually avoiding depth charges. So we're incorporating game elements into what we hope to be an educational setting. And the ultimate goal here is to create a more immersive experience to convey some of that climate information than the ones that you typically get from 2D, bar charts and graphs. Is that video playing for everyone? Does that make sense?
So coming back to this concept of a diorama, there's, as Eric showed in the first slide, the typical way of showing these is sort of a 2D.
I'll take that as a compliment.
Sorry? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, Julian.
Okay.
Yeah, the audio probably doesn't match up with the audio. Everyone's turned up so they can hear us.
Okay, so
so in virtual worlds, and especially as we get into these immersive displays and moving away from the keyboard and mouse, I think there's some unique opportunities that we have, as educators, as developers, as artists, to blend, some of these. No, I don't hear Julian. Is Julian trying to talk?
I was trying to earlier. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, he's trying to talk.
I see Julian's. You know what, Julian? I'm going to shut up and let you do it.
Okay. So one of the issues with a lot of the more static modes of presenting scientific data. I'm sure you'll all remember from textbooks in school, you get all these 2D diagrams, cross-sections of things. There's obviously a couple of issues that jump out at you right off the bat. One is the fact that the data is two-dimensional, and obviously we can get a lot more information, a lot more context if we go three-dimensional, because that's how we process the world. We're used to walking around in a space, to seeing things in 3D. But another thing that we don't get with the typical imagery in scientific literature is it's not interactive. There's no way to explore the data. And that's something that's very powerful for people. Exploring the data on your own, trying to find links with things, going and clicking on things, that sense of discovery. What you get out of that is you get a lot more emotional impact. And simply being presented with data is kind of flat. But when you're able to control the data, to interact, to explore with it, you start to build stories. And stories are a very powerful way for us to learn. We build our own narrative of, I was wandering around in this underwater environment and I discovered a new species of shark that I wasn't aware of. And it was so cool, and I'm going to tell all my friends about it. So you build up these internal stories, and it helps you both connect emotionally with the information and remember it. We actually remember stories a lot better than we do just a set of facts that we're given. So passing it back off to Eric here, and I'll let him know via text.
Actually, I think I figured it out. I hear you, albeit a little bit soft. Anders, why don't we move on? Some of these slides may or may not be appropriate for this audience. Certainly we could get into a discussion on Unity development, although I think the primary focus for today's conversation between all of us is about the different hardware components and some of the different types of input characteristics that we might be able to take advantage of. So if there are no major objections, I might suggest skipping over this for the sake of time. Does everyone on the panel agree with that? Is anyone particularly interested in hearing the advantages of Unity development and/or other game engines?
I think we should move on and talk about the
yeah, all right.
display and.
So real briefly, one of the major projects that we've been working on is this TerraViz, and yeah, thanks. Let's keep moving on. It's this ability to visualize different Earth data within an immersive environment. Yep, keep going. Developing Unity. Let's skip that. If folks are interested, I can put out another URL just to give you a quick overview of some of the software capabilities, I guess I would say, and that might provide some framework in terms of what we're using some of these exotic interfaces for. Let me copy that URL into chat.
Yeah, Jeff has an excellent point. One of the reasons we've chosen to use Unity for looking at new technology, for sort of being a creative shop, is that it's so very cross-platform. It's not tied to Windows or Mac or just in a web player, and also that there's a very large community. And that's so important when looking at new things. Certainly the Leap Motion controller, looking at integrating with the Kinect, looking at integrating with touchscreens. There have already been people building libraries. There are people interested in collaborating, answering questions. So when you're going to be working with new hardware, it's very important to pick software with a large community because you just cannot do it all on your own. You're going to run into some technological limitation that you just don't have the experience for because none of us are omniscient.
So one of the technologies that we've been looking at is called the Z-Space. Z-Space is a holographic display Just a quick overview of this slide. For those of you that saw that TerraViz demonstration video, it looks a lot like Google Earth, but in this case, the globe sort of floats in space there. I'll put out another link to a video. Sorry to be so video heavy today, but it kind of gives you a quick overview of the system. So in essence, what this is doing, you put on these glasses. There's probably some way to get a laser pointer, but in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see glasses. Those are, hey, thanks. I have no idea who's doing that, but appreciate it. Those are radially polarized, so it's a passive 3D technology. It's the same type of thing that you use when you go into like 3D IMAX. If you've seen those before, so they're fairly cheap glasses. One key difference here is you'll note on the edge of the glass and one in the middle, there are reflective points. So there's 5 reflective points. And then you'll note on the sides of the actual monitor there are little cameras. So it's actually doing head tracking. So in addition to 2 images for your eyes, the software will actually change perspective. So you have the ability to look around things, if that makes any sense. Behind the world, there's little, essentially LED lights that shine out. They reflect off the glasses, and then that gives the exact location for the user's eyes so that the screen can essentially keep up to date with what's going on. Finally, on the right-hand side there, you'll see a stylus. That stylus also gets tracked, and what you basically have is a virtual pointer which allows you to interact with the scene. So if folks are watching that video link that I sent out, hopefully it basically makes sense in terms of how that system works. Anyone want to jump in here?
This is Jeff. I'll just add that a couple days ago we gave a demo of ZSpace to some scientists at NOAA who are working with visualizing clouds, and they are very excited about the prospect of being able to fly through some 3D space, define some sort of spline of where the camera was going to travel through, and then see a 3D perspective view of the clouds over the Earth. So this was a great hardware platform for that type of visualization.
Yeah, and it's
something, guys,
so
about
important
the
to get away from that
cost of this?
mentality. Traditionally, especially within weather and within government, we've been very 2D based in, for instance, the Weather Service. When they put together the forecasts that eventually make their way to your 9 o'clock news, that's all done still on 2D maps. And it's still kind of this mentality of, we're going to all gather around a table and lay out the maps and draw on them and, create our forecasts that way. It's a bit more technological now. We have workstations. We've got a little bit more advanced software. But the mindset is still 2D. And the world is not 2D. And it really is powerful to be able to use these kinds of technologies we're going to be showing you to interact with that data a little bit more natively in a 3D environment.
I might also add that in playing around with it, the thing that impressed me the most is that with that stylus, you can pick up objects and actually bring them closer to you and turn them around so you can actually see the back side of the object itself. And it was a very natural feeling with this particular device.
Could you say something about the availability of
Go ahead, Andrews.
Yeah, could you address the availability of these? Can anyone buy them, and where, and what's the price of these units?
Of course. So unfortunately, this one is not entirely available yet. I'm sure some of us probably could email sales. Zspace.com is the website, and have a chance to get at it. We're part of their beta program. I think availability should be forthcoming. If folks are interested, I would definitely be happy to make some, invitations or get the conversation started. They're looking. The market here is certainly more, I guess, quote unquote serious use. They do also look a lot at 3D modeling, so there's drivers for 3ds Max and Maya. So John, this might be something that you'd love in terms of doing modeling. They have Unity drivers for this, obviously. That's primarily where we're at. Pricing, while not public, I don't think I'm under NDA or anything, so I'll say that it probably is going to retail for around $4,000. That will get you the monitor. You'll need a computer, obviously, as well to drive it. And there's some specific restrictions on the type of video card that it supports, but hopefully that's enough background information for those of you that have that type of budget. It's certainly very, very cool. Any other comments or questions?
There were questions about using the stylus versus the pen, but we should clarify here that it's not using a stylus directly on the screen. You're using the stylus in the air. If you watch that video, you'll get a sense of it. It's really hard to describe this. I've tried it myself, and it's a really cool feeling. But like Richard said, you're kind of the thing pops up holographically in front of you in 3D, and you're moving. It looks really weird when someone looks on without the glasses, but Eric and team, that's the best way to describe it, right? You're kind of moving it in the air, right, to move things around.
Yeah, I think that's exactly on target. I should mention that this is a single user experience. In other words, anything that uses head tracking is really limited to one person per display. So for something like, let's say Jibe, since I see a few Jibe people out there, if you have a multi-user experience, and want sort of that shared holographic feeling, you would have to have multiple monitors. And that's something, that we're discussing and looking into, a collaborative data visualization experience, which Richard might have some comments on, to really get that, $39.95, $4,000. I guess I was $5 off. To get that collaborative data visualization experience would require multiple of these devices. So that is something that's important to take note to get that shared virtual world experience.
Eric, can I jump in for a sec?
Absolutely.
All right, so we've had looks like a few questions. Obviously the concept of the stylus isn't connecting. It's maybe a little hard to wrap your head around in the abstract. So people were asking, why not just use a space navigator? Why not just use a 3D mouse? The thing about the 3D mouse is it sits on your desk and there's this disconnect. You're moving the mouse and then things are happening somewhere else over on the screen. It's the same problem with a traditional mouse. With the stylus, when you put the glasses on, you see these objects in 3D and you bring the stylus to where they are in 3D. So you actually bring the stylus in front of your face to where the object appears it is, and you grab the object. So, and yes, you do need glasses for this one. So that's what makes this so powerful, is it really is just like taking a pair of tweezers or, some other device and picking up an object in the 3D space between you and the monitor. So does that make sense to everybody, or are there any other questions?
Julian, this is Jeff. I'll just add one last thing.
Sure.
A second person or a third person could gather around the Z-space and see what the person with the stylus is doing. So in that sense, multiple people could view it, although only one person could interact at a time.
Right. And the issue that you have with that is it only would head track then one person. So you'd be looking at it from that person's perspective. It would still look 3D, just as it would to that person. And someone asked, how high can you pull objects off the screen? You probably sit about, and maybe you guys will want to correct me, but 18 inches, 2 feet away is how far your glasses are. And you can pull objects most of that space. I'd say you get at least 12 inches of Z-axis, maybe more like 18. So there really is quite a bit of depth to it.
I might add that given that the screen is probably 24 to 26 inches across, 12 to 18 inches is, in terms of ratios, pretty substantial in terms of how far things pull out. Obviously, if an object grows to be a size that's larger than the screen, then the effect is somewhat broken. Once an object basically goes behind the camera, I guess I would say, at that point, obviously it breaks. So depending on the size of the object that you're visualizing, you can pull it out, either more or less. Does that make sense?
And this is one of those technologies where videos really just cannot do it justice. It just is so cool in person, and it's always a wow factor for everyone who sees it. So any of you who are in Boulder, I certainly encourage you, send us an email, swing by. We'd be happy to let you sit down and play with it. And it's one of those new technologies, they're not always completely intuitive, but this one you just sit down and it makes sense. This is what the world is supposed to be like.
Yeah, it's really cool. Should we move on to the leap motion? I'll forward.
I think that would be a good idea, unless there's more questions.
Hmm? All right, who wants to start?
And I'm talking muted. That's why no one's here. We've been discussing a visual component, albeit the stylus has interactivity to it. The Leap is more of a hands-free controller. Just a show of hands or a Y in the chat. Are people familiar with the Leap motion? I sense that we're preaching to the choir. That's all right. Okay, hey, there's one no at least. Thank you, Robin. The closest analogy that I would say, if people have seen Tom Cruise's movie Minority Report, think of this as kind of Kinect on steroids. And also, it's obviously a much smaller area. So... Vaporware, David, that's certainly fine. I will say that we've had the opportunity to participate in this beta program as well. I've seen it work. Let me also copy out a video so people can get a better sense of what this is as well. So 1 minute while I copy the video and someone else fill the dead space on the panel.
I can certainly hop in there. So Eric mentioned this is kind of Kinect on steroids. It's definitely a much higher resolution sensor. It's the next step forward. It's aimed at a different way of interfacing with the device. The Kinect is meant to be something that you back up from. You're a few feet, 5 feet, 10 feet away from, and it interacts with your whole body. The Leap is meant just for your hands. So it sits in front of you at a workstation. There's kind of a small space that you interact with it. The sensor in it is about 200 times as sensitive as the Kinect, and you actually can get quite detailed information about finger positions and things. So in that case, it's very much a step forward. And I don't think this is going to be, by any means, the last of this technology. The idea of using infrared sensors to get distance is something that's been used in robotics for decades, and people are just starting to finally realize that this is very cool for other applications. And I think we're going to see a proliferation of devices like this if and when the Leap takes off and is successful. And considering they already have something on close to 500,000 pre-orders, I think this is going to be a quite successful device. I should also mention that they're in talks with... I don't remember exactly the producer of PCs. It might be Asus, but they're in talk with a major manufacturer about actually integrating this directly into laptops and other devices. So we'll probably see a bit more about this. And Eric, back to you.
Oh, can I just add 2 quick points?
Go for it.
One is that Google Earth has a driver for this, so you can now navigate through Google Earth with the Kinect, and Eric demonstrated that to me about a week ago. And second, for a more updated movie reference, the Minority Report, the new Iron Man 3 has a lot of visualizations where you see him using his hands to control virtual screens.
And we should, talk about the potential downsides and things along with the good. As I think someone mentioned earlier, the space in which you can interact with is fairly small. It's, maybe 3 feet wide. So you will find yourself, there's no visual boundary to where the sensor ends. So you will find yourself going off the edge. Your hands will drift. There's also no tactile contact, which makes things a little bit less precise. If, for instance, you have a control based on the movement of your hand, as a human being, your hand, it shakes a little, it drifts. So it's not always easy to get that much precision, for the same reason that not everyone is a surgeon. You can't always interact with it as precisely as you would want to. On the flip side, though, with these new technologies, some of the amazing usages may come in combining them. We just talked about the Z-Space, this holographic display. One thing that I'm excited about would be putting the Z-Space with the Leap controller. So instead of using a stylus, instead of interacting with these things with a pencil, you just stick your hand out there and you literally just grab things. You pinch and pull them in 3D space as if they were in 3D space in front of you. So, ideas like this, how can we combine these new technologies? New technologies are always kind of like a spider web. First you put out these basic threads in all these different directions, and then you start building the connections between them.
Hey, Julian, a number of questions here about fatigue. Do you get tired in your hands after a while with this?
I think that will be an issue. Just to hop in, during development, we're not in a place yet where it's being actively used in a production capacity. And during development, there's enough downtime to where it's not so much an issue. But you think carpal tunnel syndrome is bad. I think there's all sorts of weird ergonomics here that are going to come into play once these become more popular. Shoulder injuries may be the new thing versus wrist injuries or some such. But I think there's a lot of unknowns there in terms of how this will fit in and what best practices will be, and when all of us have to look like Tom Cruise, or I guess now, who's Iron Man? We're going to have to look like them to interact with our computers.
Just to describe what it looks like, the sensor is a tiny little piece about the size of a thumb drive, right? That you just hook into your USB port, and
right.
It's going to be for about $70. Is that right?
That makes sense.
Sorry, say that again, Eric.
I was going to say the image of the Leap is on the screen there. It's right underneath the monitor.
Right. And would you expect future laptops to have this or similar technologies built in already, so you wouldn't have to buy the separate unit?
Absolutely. In fact, Julian, do you want to hop in on that one? You've probably been paying closer attention to me.
Yeah, I mentioned it briefly a little bit ago, but yeah, they've actually been talking with several hardware manufacturers and actually have an agreement with one, and I can Google that while we're chatting and post a link in a minute, but they do actually want to integrate this right into a laptop kind of up front by where the trackpad and things currently are.
Yeah, I think I heard that it's HP is going to be releasing a line of laptops at Best Buy. I think it's like Q2 2014, I think they're expected to come out.
And I think Asus, too, they have a couple arrangements with OEM manufacturers at this point. They'll be the higher-end laptops and gaming, obviously, quote-unquote. Although, honestly, I don't see Leap, at least initially, being as useful in a gaming capacity, at least like first-person shooters, things where trigger responses need to be very fast. The acuity just isn't there yet. But I think, this is version 1 of the hardware, and it'll be destined for improvement. Things like Google Earth or data visualization or virtual worlds, where trigger response isn't necessarily as fast. And I think, John, you'll probably have some similar things to say about the Oculus. I think those are going to be better applications for some of these technologies, at least initially, where response time doesn't have to be in the millisecond range in order to have something useful occur.
Well, I think the head tracking capacity of Leap Motion is going to be the most powerful in the short term, just because we may not all get into the gestures of pinching and moving our fingers to manipulate the screen, but the fact that this thing can track your head, that turns your monitor into a display that has depth. You could actually move your head to the right and actually peer around the corner of the edge of your monitor to be able to look into a space, and that sort of thing excites me. I think that has a lot of potential. I think that the Leap also detects your eye movement. So you can actually scroll by moving your eye up and down. Now, I don't know how cool that's going to be, but things like that, in the future, if it knows you're looking to the right or to the left, it might be able to respond. Yeah, I thought I read somewhere that Leap Motion can actually respond to eye movement, and that there was a test where someone was using it to scroll, similar to what you can do with Google Glass, up and down. But yeah, I think that could be somewhat awkward, but the head motion, at the very least, I think has a lot of potential.
One application I'm excited about is, imagine giving a speech or doing a sales role play like we do a lot of, and being able to look people in the eye and gesture as you're talking and see your avatar mirror those gestures and those head movements. I think that will make for real natural conversations in 3D. Would you guys agree on that?
Definitely. Yeah, all of these technologies are about bringing the computer out of the computer, making your laptop, your device, whatever, more situationally aware. And all of these devices, the Leap, the Kinect, they kind of operate on the same principle. They're basically a camera. And additionally, with some of the new smartphones that do eye tracking and things, it's all about cameras. So we're putting eyes on our devices, we're letting them peer out into the space so they can watch us, which admittedly is a little bit creepy, but also useful because they can watch us, they can see what we're doing when we're not actually touching them. They can see what our eyes are doing, what our head is doing, what our hands are doing, and they can bring that into a 3D space. And of course, talking, gesturing, moving our eyes is something that comes very naturally. It's not something that has to be taught. So there's a lot of possibility there.
Cool. Well, I know you guys have...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think, Julian, you were the one that was telling me that the new Android phones do eye tracking, and if you're watching a movie and look away, it automatically pauses, which is great unless you're someone who likes to look away or close their eyes during those scary moments in the movie where you don't want to see it. After the software now nicely pauses at the moment where you don't want to watch it and waits for you to look again before it restarts. So I think there'll be some interesting UI decisions that need to occur as we begin to experiment with these newer forms of input and display.
Yeah, there are all kinds of horror stories. For instance, they have eye tracking where if you look down past the bottom of the device, it'll scroll the page down. And, it becomes oversensitive. It doesn't know people. It takes normal interaction, normal gestures, and assumes that they have meaning, and all of a sudden your web pages are zooming around all over the place, and you never intended that to happen. So yeah, definitely growing pains, all kinds of growing pains.
Cool. Well, I want to give enough time for John, our Oculus Rift fanboy, to present what the future of virtual reality. John, do you want to take us through what Oculus Rift is?
Sure. Do we have the screenshot of that? I think it was the next slide, or coming up anyway. It shows the picture of the actual unit.
Actually, yeah, right. Let me forward to that.
So
I think that would be the
I'm
next
sure
slide.
most of you are at least
Yeah, skip that. Keep going.
Yeah.
Couple more.
Yeah.
Yeah, keep going. There we go. And I just copied the URL into chat.
So Oculus Rift is I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this. It's a virtual reality headset that puts an immersive display right very close to your eyes. It actually is strapped to your head. This is an early prototype version of it that they put out there during their Kickstarter campaign. And Kickstarter is basically how Oculus Rift achieved all of its funding for the development kit release. And they were asking for a considerably smaller fraction of the money that they actually ended up earning on Kickstarter because so many people wanted to get these developer kits. And so the good news was, early on we thought that developer kits were going to be things that we had to assemble ourselves, like they were going to be just a kit of parts and you can put it together and experience it, and it was something like $300. And so I pledged early on and got into it, and because they exceeded their funding goals by so much, the developer kit actually is pretty polished. It's a very handsome looking piece of hardware that comes in a nice big plastic hard-shelled box, and it's very comfortable, and it has nice foam fittings on it, and it's a very lightweight piece of hardware, and you literally just put it on your head and you load up a screen, and basically your computer treats it like a second monitor. And so you basically go into your computer's screen settings and set it up to have duplicate what's on your screen into the Oculus Rift. And there's a number of demos out there that you can play with to be able to experience different builds and different test games that people have released. And the other thing that's fun to do, if you haven't tried a Rift yet, there's a lot of videos out there of people's reactions to trying on the Rift. And I think those videos really say it all. Even if you can't try it out, just watching how other people react to putting this thing on, I think really speaks to the immersive power of this. It really puts you in another place. And I was cautiously optimistic going into it. I actually get very motion sick in reality. I joke that I get motion sick sitting in a rocking chair, and I really do. I'm very, very prone to motion sickness. So, and I wear glasses. I have pretty poor vision, so I figured that I would probably be the worst case scenario for this. But when I got my Oculus Rift, I put it on and it immediately worked. I had no trouble whatsoever with my vision or with getting motion sick. And it's stereoscopic. It's full stereoscopic 3D. And so basically it's like if you look at the way it's built, it's like an iPhone mounted horizontally, and then the screen is divided in two. So the right side is delivering a screen to your right eye, and the left side is delivering a screen to your left eye. And they're offset just enough to give you that stereoscopic 3D. And so basically, when you put this on, you just immediately feel like you are teleported to another place. And the first thing you're trying to do is sort of reach out and touch things, and you can look all the way up and you can look all the way down, and you can turn around and look behind you. You can look all around in the space. And the head tracking is seamless. It really follows your head very, very accurately. You don't ever feel like it's catching up to where your head movement is. So that contributes to that immersion that, you're really looking around inside of a space. And so it's sort of like having, like scuba goggles on, and you're, underwater, almost like you're sort of in another dimension through these goggles. And there's a reaction video of a 90-year-old woman who put this on that you can find on YouTube that also says it all. She just immediately gets it, and she's totally immersed, and she's enjoying walking around in this Tuscany demo, and you can just definitely tell that she feels as if she's there. And there's a roller coaster demo that they put out there where people will go through that was built with the kit. And it has the typical, click, clack as you're going up the very steep ascent up to the very top, and then you go over the corner, and then you start sliding down the other side. And I don't think anybody can do that standing up. It really puts you there, and it's hard not to just scream and react exactly like you would if you were really on the roller coaster. So, and I say that only because I think those videos really speak to the real total sense of immersion that you get, and through that immersion, I think there's going to be so much potential in not just games, but I think in training and education, and obviously military simulation, and all kinds of different things. I see a lot of questions scrolling by.
John, did you mention what the resolution was? I saw that question fly by, and I actually had that question too.
Yeah, it's 1280 by 800 in the developer kit, and so it's not terribly high resolution. you do see pixels individually, and that's something that people do complain about. And also, there's sort of a screen door effect, they say, where it's sort of like you're looking through a screen, because you do see that line in between the pixels. And that was something I was concerned about early on too, but I swear when you put it on, you forget all about that. Unless you really are being picky, unless you really want to find something wrong with it. The resolution is low, but the fact that you're standing in another place and you feel like you're really there, you forget about those pixels. You start to just blur that, and the gestalt of the whole scene just sort of overtakes everything that would be the drawback of the resolution and the screen door. And also the consumer version, which will be coming out in, I think, the third quarter of next year, the consumer version is coming out, will have a much higher resolution display. And so part of that will be resolved when it is released for consumer. But the developer kit has a 1280 by 800.
So, John, it has head tracking, but if you want to move around in the space, you still need an input device, such as a keyboard or Xbox controller, or even the leap motion, right?
Yeah, you do. You can move around. Yeah, exactly. Xbox controller or a keyboard. There's also integration with, I'm struggling to remember the name of it, but it's like a unit that you hold in your hands. And maybe you guys know what I'm talking about, but it actually you can move this thing around, and it actually tracks the movement of your hand. It's sort of like the Sony Move system. And a lot of people are using that. They're building in the functionality for that, so you can actually like reach out your arms, and you can see your arms in the virtual space, and you can move things around with your arms, which I haven't tried. I think there's a bundled package where it's like $100 to buy this input device. There's people that are mounting Xbox Connect on top of their Oculus Rift, and then so you can literally walk around and it's mapping in 3D the environment that you're in real time. And so, as you turn your head to the left, it's like bringing in a 3D model of the space that you're actually standing in, and that's actually tracking your head movement. So if you move around, if you actually walk from the left to the right, it's detecting that, so you can actually walk around inside of a space depending on how long the cord of your Kinect and your Oculus Rift are. You can actually move around in the room. And similarly, people are mounting these. I really should try to find out what the name of this. Again, it's a motion sensing device, and people are mounting those on the Rift too. And so what that does is if you have it mounted to your head and you have the right game mechanism programmed into whatever environment that you're accessing, you can duck down and you can look to the right and you can move your head to the left and really move around in full 3D to be able to get more of a sense of immersion. So that has a lot of potential too, I think. But even just by itself, just standing, even if all you do is stand still and you don't move around and all you do is just look around an environment, that's enough right there just to knock your socks off, because it really is just an amazing experience. And I've done several demos with this locally with architects here in Madison, and every single time I put it on, and they're just their breath is taken away, really engrossed in the environment. And looking around, it's not a difficult technology to sell, because everybody that sees it is just completely blown away by it.
So, John, that's a question from John here in the audience. Do you just hook it up to your PC with the USB, or how does that work?
Yeah, it has several different input. It has. I'm looking right at it right now. It has a VGA connection, an HDMI, and then the USB. And so, yeah, the USB goes into, obviously, a USB port, and then you can connect either VGA or HDMI.
Could you make it wireless, Wi-Fi?
Not yet. Someone built a hack for that, but getting video display over Wi-Fi is still a bottleneck. It's just not, you can't do it fast enough to make it update fast enough. So you'd have a certain degree of latency.
And John, could you address how you develop for this when you work in Unity? Can you just click a button and output a version that plays for Oculus, or do you have to do a lot of custom development to make it work in the Oculus?
Yeah, so it's really easy. My engine of choice is Unity, so I use Unity. You can also use UDK, the Unreal Development Kit, and a number of other game engines. Pretty much every game engine is now supporting Rift. But the Unreal Development Kit, the Unity Oculus Development Kit comes with a prefab first-person controller. And so if you're familiar with Unity, you know that in your standard assets, there's a first-person controller prefab. And when you have a scene, you just drag that into your scene, and then that's what basically builds your first-person experience. Well, the Oculus Rift is exactly the same thing. It's just a little first-person controller. You drag it in, and it automatically has all of the sensors and tracking and camera set up, it's all set up already. And so you drag that into your scene, you hit publish, you build it out to a standalone executable file for PC or Mac, and you run it, and that's it. It just works.
So, but everything has to be developed for it. You couldn't just enter this via Live Engage environment or Second Life with it, right?
No, you'd have to have a special, and you just have to be able to get the display split to that stereoscopic vision. And you also have to make sure that you get a decent performance. It has to be 60 frames per second, which is what they say it has to be. I've tried demos down to like 30 frames per second, and it's still okay. It's still not that bad. You get ghosting, and you get anti-aliasing, and you get a little bit of a, it's not quite as smooth, but you can get down to 30 frames per second, and it's not the worst case. But you do want to get it to as high as you can. So that's a little bit of the trouble with that. They're saying Second Life might have some trouble getting to 60 frames per second, just because of the nature of the platform, and it's a pretty big environment. But I think if you turn your draw distance way down and you have a very small environment and you focus on building a very detailed, smaller space, I think you could probably get to 60 frames per second in Second Life pretty easily on a modern machine. But as far as like developing for Unity, I mean, I took all of my old builds. I have a virtual Dubuque build, and I built a game with my daughter called Bunny Stories, where she drew all the artwork, and it's all 5-year-old kid hand drawn everything, and it was actually built for Android originally. And I dragged the Rift controller in there, and now I can walk around inside this world that she drew, and it's really neat. It's pretty spectacular.
Wow, I think we're all are yearning for to get this in our hands to try it out. It just sounds amazing. You can sign up for them, right? But I did it a few weeks ago. I'm still waiting for my set. I know you've done the same, Richard. But it's going to be widely available for. It seems to be retailing around $300, right? And you said be widely available at the end of the year as a plan, or?
I think next year the consumer version comes out, and that'll be under $300. Again, higher resolution, better tracking, and all around better unit for under $300 sometime next year. But the developer kits you can sign up for now, I think they're an even $300. And I would expect those to probably be delayed out probably 2 months if you order one now, just because they're incredibly popular. Everybody's buying them up. So, I mean, in the bigger picture, I guess I think that there's going to be quite a while before this is even close to getting mainstream adoption, just because these are the very first developer kits, just hot off the press, a couple of weeks, a few weeks they've been out now. And the developers are just starting to experiment. It'll be another year yet before the consumer version comes out yet. And there's going to be a whole process of like figuring out how and when and where it's acceptable to wear an Oculus Rift in public, and and sort of what the best use cases are. I actually think that even like sporting events having video. I mean, if you're watching the Super Bowl, on American television, you could actually just have a video camera recording the game in stereoscopic 3D 3D or mounted to the players' helmets, or for your that would actually put you right there. So TV and movies, when the resolution gets a little better, I think that's going to be a pretty big use case. But obviously, training and simulation are huge use cases for this. Even if it doesn't get mainstream adoption, I think there's going to be a lot of applications that we'll look forward to with that.
Cool. Well, you suddenly lit the text chat on fire here, John.
I really hope everybody gets a chance to check this thing out, because it's so cool. And I've been working like I said in the beginning, I've been working in virtual environments for like 6, 7, probably 8 years now. And it's like my avatar on a screen. So it's sort of like, my Second Life avatar's name was Keystone. I feel like Keystone was experiencing all those buildings that I've been designing all along. I wasn't in those spaces. It was sort of like I was looking at it on a screen. And, I've always, just out of curiosity, asked people how big they feel like a building in Second Life. Like, how big would it be if it was here in reality? And a lot of people think of those spaces as like a small, like a miniature model. They think it's, it would fit on your desktop, it'd be like a study model or something. That's how they feel. That's how they think about that space. But when you put it in a Rift, suddenly it's like, now you're inside. You are in the building and you're looking around, and it makes you, I feel like it's the very first time I've ever been able to actually experience the buildings that I'm designing. And it's so neat, it's really, some cases, things don't work out quite as well as you think they are in the third person or the distant sort of on-screen monitor view. In some cases, things are really powerful experiences. Like we're designing a house, a real world house for some clients, and so the first thing I wanted to do is to be able to look at that house inside of a Rift, and I put it into Unity, and I've got the Revit model in there, and the design is all mocked up, including the fireplace is burning, and it's a sunny day, and there's birds chirping, and it's a wonderful space in there, and and I would go into the Rift and spend a pretty extended period of time walking around and looking at every room and looking at the view out the window and looking back and how the axis lines up with the front door through to the backyard, which was something that was really important to these clients, and making sure that that's a very carefully choreographed experience. And some of the things in the design were way off, like that, this would have moved forward with construction and I never would have caught. Some of the beam sizes were a little bit too big, and the way it connected to the wall wasn't quite right. But when you put the Rift on, you immediately see that, like, okay, that needs to be fixed. And so you go back into Maya, you make a few changes, or Revit, and you go back into Rift, okay, that's a lot better. And it's sort of this iterative back and forth design process that enables you to make the design as perfect as you could ever get it before construction starts. So if this isn't the tool for architecture, I don't know what is. It really completely changes your design process. And then you take it off. And, it's like I'm working at night, and it's like inside the model, it's a beautiful sunny day, and I take it off, and I'm in my home studio, and it's dark, and it's raining out in the real world, and it's always kind of a jarring experience to suddenly, you take it off, and the reality isn't quite as beautiful as it was inside the virtual model. So it's kind of funny to see how immersed you really feel.
The great escape for the Wisconsin winters for you, huh?
That's right. Yeah, I'm going to be wintering in Tuscany from now on, virtually.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much. This has been really inspiring, and it's so cool to see these technologies that we've been talking and dreaming about for years really come to fruition and coming to the market at really low prices where they're going to probably become widely available. So thanks for all your great work in spreading the word about this and doing all the developments and prototypes that we can try out. So and thanks everyone for joining us. We'll take a break next week. We have 2 more sessions scheduled for the spring. So in a couple of weeks we have Maggie Badji from Capgemini joining us from the UK, talking about gamification. And after that, we have Professor Kevin Werbach from Wharton Business School, who was the teacher of the gamification course that MOOC, a massively open online course that had 140,000 students. So that should be a really interesting talk as well. So no meeting next week, but the week after that we'll have a meeting, and a meeting after that. And they'll both be here in this Engage platform. So thank you so much for joining us. Check in on our Facebook and Google Plus site for other event. And as always, feel free to contact myself, Anders Granstedt, for any ideas for speakers and topics for the fall session, or if we can help you at the Granstedt Group with any custom development. So, and I see the speakers here are posting their contact information. That's awesome. So, thanks everyone for joining us, and thanks for the panel members.